Hi, I'm Chino with Nerds on the Couch, and today we're going to be reviewing Lone Ranger.
Renee?
Marlon?
And I'm David.
We saw the Lone Ranger along with that weekend where it seemed like everybody was competing with each other. It was the weekend of the Lone Ranger versus Despicable Me 2. And obviously we're coming in a little late, so we know who won that battle. Basic story. Okay, that I got here is, again, Native American warrior Tonto recounts the untold tales that transformed John Reed, a man of the law, into legend of justice. We saw this. We saw trailers to this film like, what, almost a year ago? Like this. I mean, they've been promoting this movie like crazy. And now, you know, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, cool, the Lone Ranger. You know, I mean, I kind of liked the idea. I was kind of getting forward into it. I really wasn't, you know, I'm not that big of a cowboy guy and all that. But I thought, oh, this was going to be an interesting movie.
I also saw the previews and all that, and I thought, okay, it's a good concept. They have Johnny Depp playing Tonto? I don't know about that. Come on. And the more I saw of Johnny Depp, the more I said to myself, I've seen this before. It's Jack Sparrow, and I'm sorry, I don't want to see Jack Sparrow anymore.
Trailer I thought it was going to be good. Honestly, I saw the movie and I said, it's going to be just like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's going to have a lot of action. And that's kind of what I was going to watch it for, just the action. I was like, oh, you know, it's going to have a lot of action. Johnny Depp, I don't have a problem with him. The character actor. He plays a character. I could stand him in Cinderella. Was it called Cinderella or Alice in Wonderland? Alice in Wonderland, you know. I could stand him. It's fine. I don't have a problem with him playing a Native American.
Well, obviously,
you know?
since you're getting them all wrong.
Like I said, I have no problem with him in the movies, you know. He did an okay job in Tonto, and like I said, I was expecting a lot of action. That's what I was expecting.
Well, when I first saw the trailers too, you know, I saw it and like, okay, alright, who's playing Lone Ranger? Okay, I already know Johnny Depp's in it, but who's Lone Ranger? And so the Lone Ranger, you know, nothing much. I mean, it was like, he's a side character to Tonto. Tonto's going to be the main guy. I mean, it's all going to be about Tonto and how cool he is. And, you know, I've watched the old Lone Ranger things, and I thought, isn't Lone Ranger the one that every kid wanted to be, the one that was going to be the cool guy that you really wanted as your Lone Ranger and everything? I mean, you know, it just became about Johnny Depp as Tonto, and I was like, you know what, quite frankly, I really didn't want to go see the film.
Plain simple, you're seeing the beginning of the story of the Lone Ranger and all that. And when I started watching it and all that, I realized, okay, you know, we're getting into this cowboy days and all that. I got a little confused at first of who was who, you know, in the beginning, because they talk about a guy coming into town and all that, and then they switch and they're talking, you know, they use the same last name, which was Reed, you know, and I kept thinking, oh, that's his wife, and, you know, that kind of messed me up in the beginning, because I had some ideas going. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, because, you know, I mean, I was like, who's the Lone Ranger here, you know, and wait, is that his wife, right? You know, when I get confused like that, it kind of throws me off. Mm-hmm. So right away, I was thrown off.
I was bored. I was like, okay, when is it going to get to its point? I mean, where is the point? If you get to it and at least forgive me for saying this, but forgo all the foreplay and get right down to it, you might get to something, and it's just way too slow. It just takes too much time to get to anything.
They should have decided what they wanted this movie to be, you know. It had some comedy, but I think the comedy outweighed the action. You know what I mean? That's kind of in my opinion. And I think they tried to make it funny, and in Pirates of the Caribbean, they balance it out really well. You have action, you have comedy, and it works. You know, Johnny Depp does a good job of, you know, being Jack Sparrow and still keeping the action going. Whereas here, I agree with you guys. It takes forever to have any action. And for me, the biggest problem was the Lone Ranger, the character, the Reed, one who becomes a Lone Ranger, I hated his character. He was a pansy. I mean, the only thing I could think of was they were trying to do something like Zorro. They were trying to do this duality thing, which, if that's what they were trying, this was an epic fail. Okay?
The movie starts in the, was it 1930?
1920s, 1930s, something like that.
1930s. It was later.
Yeah.
And you see an old Tonto. And you see like an old Johnny Depp in makeup, and hopefully it's in makeup, otherwise that's what it really is without it. But
Hollywood does that to you, man.
it was a bad job. I mean, to me, it was a bad job making him look old. Was that needed?
I didn't find the real need for it, but it. I mean, I can see why they did it, but it just, that part itself also took a long time to go anywhere.
See, and again, you know, it's not again, part of the story is that this is an old Tonto telling the story to some kid. And I thought it wasn't needed, because I thought, again, it stretched everything out. They easily could have started the movie with like a Texas, and again, it doesn't even look like Texas. Some Texas scene and called it, you know, Austin, 18, whatever year it was. And they could have started off from that.
My question also is, why did they try to go ahead and say this was Texas when it's obviously from the background? This is Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going ahead and saying promontory subject.
It wasn't Utah.
It wasn't Utah?
It wasn't Utah.
Well, was it?
Promontory.
New Mexico.
I thought it was Arizona.
Mexico.
You know that we're going to be
Promontory is not New Mexico. That's their,
They filmed
Utah.
it in New Mexico.
No, but
So you guys know, you guys were all right. It was all New Mexico, Arizona, also Colorado, and
Utah.
Utah.
Let's
There
okay.
was one part in Texas.
Okay,
We can keep
it turns out my daughter, who looked it up right now, is correct. They shot him everywhere in a little part in Texas. But, so again, I guess that's where all that money went, moving around all that stuff. And that was the other thing, you know, part of it I had issues with was how long, you know, yeah, the story is long. It was 2.5 hours. And I'm okay with 2.5 hours. I'm okay with some movies being really long.
If it is action-packed and it all comes together.
Exactly.
And
because here, there was so stretches of nothing. There was just absolute stretches. I mean, after the big opening railroad action scene, which I can imagine probably that's where part of the $200 million went. What happened afterwards? Guys, what happened after that?
It's the song from America, "Wandered in the Desert with with a horse with no name."
Yeah, for me, I had no problem with the pacing. I mean, really, I had no problem. It flowed. The pacing didn't bother me at all. I mean, I'm going to go back to what bothered me as the Lone Ranger. You're supposed to care about this character. I had zero interest in him. I would have shot him, okay? That's how much interest I had in him, okay? I wouldn't have minded if Tonto put on the mask and became the Lone Ranger. That would have made the movie a lot more fun. See what they were trying to do. They tried to put mysticism into the movie, which was a fail, an epic fail in this movie. I mean, you see the mysticism in Pirates of the Caribbean, and it works. Yeah. It's acceptable. It goes into, it flows really well into here. Here, the mysticism they try to put into is disjointed. It's like, no, they just can't seem to get it right. And not only that, there's a lot of things they just can't seem to get right, you know?
They try to go ahead and take that mysticism and shove it down your throat, and it's just not working.
Okay, I'll tell you one thing that they did do right. Basically, William Fichtner is the perfect choice and made the perfect villain with Butch Cavendish.
Well, let me tell you something. I hate to interrupt, but let me point out. He doesn't look like that. William Fichtner.
Oh, no, he doesn't. I do commend.
Yeah.
The makeup artist did not do as good of a job with Tonto, but they did an excellent job.
Which I think that's part of where the $200 million.
But no, I can tell you this. He played a very good villain. I wanted to see more of him.
Whether they were trying to make Tonto be a crazy guy, or a deeply spiritual guy. And I wish they would have picked one or the other. Because if they made him crazy and we understood, okay, here's a crazy Indian guy, and you see his background story and it makes sense, I would have been 100% behind that. And that would have worked a little better. Or again, if they went the other way and they said he's a mystical warrior, I would have fallen behind that too. But they try to do the back and forth thing, and when you do that wishy-washy, is he nuts, is he mystical, is he nuts, is he mystical, it fails.
With me, another thing that fails is, look at the Lone Ranger. Do you consider him heroic? In your opinion, is he an example of heroism?
In this movie?
Well, yeah, this is the only movie we're talking
no.
about.
Here's what they were trying to do. And again, they failed. They failed. They were trying, he was on the way to becoming the Lone Ranger that we wanted. Not the one we deserved.
This is not the Lone Ranger we deserve.
No. They were trying to do the story of the guy who's not ready. Who is supposed to be this guy. And you see the journey and all that, which again, you lose it, and it's like, okay, they had some good parts, and not so good parts, and all this. But then at the end,
When you come to this
you
movie,
had the Lone Ranger win.
it's got too much comedy to be a Western. To be honest with me, I wouldn't consider this movie a Western. It's not. It's just, when I see a Western, I don't expect to be, No, I expect it to, either be one thing, either be funny or be gritty, not try to combine both, I mean, think of Blazing Saddles. That's straight up comedy and it's a Western and it works, because it's straight up comedy, Here, either be one or the other, you know what I mean? Don't try to be completely funny or don't try to be just a Western.
Did we need Helen Bonham Carter in this movie?
No!
No.
No! At all! Why is she in the movie? It serves no purpose
She was
except
like a
to
man
go
with a wooden leg.
Yeah, that's it. That character would be great in Pirates of the Caribbean, not in this movie,
And, that was just a small thing I wanted to bring up, was that we had a lot of characters that were needed. We didn't need Helen Bonham Carter. They could have replaced her with like a TV actress, and it would have been fine.
They could have cut any of the scene,
completely.
any of those scenes. They could have cut them out, and it would not have changed the movie at all.
And then the other thing I was questioning here, did we need Johnny Depp? Because of the way this film was.
I think so, man. It's the only fun I had in the movie.
Well, they threw him in there for the name.
Yeah, and I understand that, but
Could
he's the
another
only-
actor have just done the same funny skits?
Well,
He didn't improvise this stuff.
the biggest
He's not an improviser.
the biggest problem I had with this movie was that they made an 1980s Lone Ranger. You know what I mean? And that wasn't good. It wasn't a good movie.
Oh no,
It
that
just wasn't.
80s movie.
That 80s movie is pretty awful. You know what I mean? So going into that, knowing that the 80s movie was horrible, I kind of prefer watching that one than this one. Okay, that's my opinion at this point. You know what I mean?
Having gone ahead and said our piece on all of the different points, now comes the time where we go ahead and review it. Okay, let's start with Chino. Your review.
I give it. I was hovering around a C, but I'm giving it a D. It's just D just because all the points that we said. It's not a good movie. I hate the Army Hammer. I don't hate him, but I hate this interpretation of Lone Ranger. I don't blame him. I blame the writers. It's just, it wasn't good. I mean, the character he was supposed to portray, I guess he portrayed it very well, but the character that he's portraying sucks. I'm sorry. He's a wuss.
Okay, Orly?
Well, since I was going into the movie with low expectations anyway, and I was like, alright, I'll watch it anyway, just for the heck of it, I have to give it a 60. That's an F. I quite frankly, I didn't like the fact that Lone Ranger was not the main character. I didn't like he wasn't treated like the main character. It was mostly Tonto and everything else. Even though I did like the Cavendish character and the way he looked and the way he acted and the way he ate, I still didn't like it enough to even give it a passing grade. I really just didn't like it.
I went in there kind of feeling like, oh, this movie was going to be terrible because of just the vibe of it. I'm not a fan of westerns. You know, everybody knows I'm not a fan of westerns. I'm also not a fan of World War movies, war movies in general. But westerns are kind of just not my thing. And so I went in there, and I was a bit thrown off because, again, I got confused in the beginning, and I was like, okay, I'm back into it, and it dragged. So let me tell you some things. The movie to me is 2.5 hours long, which I think was too long. If they cut it down to maybe an hour and 80 minutes, or just try to shoot for 2 hours, it would have gone a little better. If the actors had a little more room, I think the actors were stifled. I think they told the actors to do this, and they forced the actors to be in these little spots where they couldn't grow. I didn't see Johnny Depp. I didn't. I saw Tonto, and the way he acted, and Johnny Depp's good at doing facials, and he's a good actor, but I kept thinking they're stifling him. And and I said somebody else could have done it. Somebody else could have reenacted the scenes almost exactly. Tonto acting like hey, Tonto, all that. He's so stiff he could be a wooden Indian that you see at the stores. And more, show us more, and they tried, but it just fell short. And the plot itself was so predictable. I knew who the villains were like within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and I knew there's a conspiracy, there's a bunch of shooting, and like, oh, the Lone Ranger is going to be the Lone Ranger at the end. And again, the humor was just bad jokes, which didn't work. And so because of that, I give this film a grade of a C-. It had some entertainment, it had some value, the action scenes were good. Storyline, I wish, I saw the potential.
And now it comes to my part of the review. And I'm going to say this. This film cost Disney $212 million. And there is a line from the movie that I think really sums up my opinion of what Disney got. Bad trade. They gave them a whole bunch of money expecting a Pirates of the Caribbean in the West, and unfortunately they got neither of them. As a Western movie fan, and that's the difference between you and me, I grew up on Westerns, I love Westerns, and I don't really consider this a
The
Western.
apple dumpling gang was a better...
The apple
The apple dumpling gang.
Let's go, apple dumpling.
Yeah, let's all go see. Come on, let's all go see the apple dumpling gang.
Unfortunately, Disney, I'm sorry you got a bad deal with this one. Bruckheimer went ahead and stole your money. So I am giving this movie a 50.
Wow,
Damn,
no worse than me.
That's a low grade.
I'm sorry. It's basically... I knew it wasn't going to be very good. My brother was going, oh, it's going to be the best movie of the year. And I'm going, no. I said for my brother, wait a week, and then you're going to see the best movie of the year. This is Nerds on the Couch, and you can go ahead and visit us on Facebook at facebook.nerdsoac. Thank you very much.